jannah waj'alna min ahli firdaus birahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Allahumma ja'al majlisina hadza majlisan mubarakan li ashabina wa ahlina birahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina azabannar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallam walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Amin, Amin Ya Rabbal Alamin. Thank you, Raja Shahril, for the dua recitation. Now, it is our pleasure to invite Mr. Abdul Hakim, Director of Program, to deliver an opening remarks on behalf of the organizing committee. Please welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I welcome Mr. Nizam Bashir from Nizam Bashir and Associates, and to all the audience and also committee who conduct this program. Not to forget all the audience from first year to fifth year who willingly to join this program and spend your weekend during this program. Okay. First of all, I want to let all of you to know that One Lawyer One Month is a program which a collaborated program between Law Society USIM and USIM Muting Club for the with the purpose to enhance the knowledge for all law students in USIM regarding their future career on whether to become a lawyer and what they can do with a law degree. So basically, I really hope that everyone can enjoy this program, and I hope to see you in next program which will be conducted under the same theme, One Lawyer, One Month. And that's all from me. I hope you guys can enjoy this program. That's all.
Given. Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, now let's begin our event with the first session, which is the Kahoot session. It consists of a few simple questions to test your knowledge about the legal career. First and foremost, before we begin this session, I would like to ask all of you to open the Kahoot and please.
Let's come to 9884. We will begin our our Kahoot session at 10:11. So while waiting, you guys can enter this Kahoot quiz. You can click kahoot.it and the game pin is 8159884. All right. So right now we will begin the session. Okay. So no one else want to join? Is there anyone else? So okay, we will proceed. Okay, thank you everyone for joining this Kahoot session. As the conclusion from Kahoot question, we can see that we have various audience from first year to fifth year, and then there is also some of us wish to enter the legal career, and some of us also do not intend to enter the legal world or legal career. So that's all from me. I hope everyone can enjoy this Kahoot session, this Wonder Year 1 month session. I give back to the MC.
Thank you everyone for your willingness to answer the questions in Kahoot just now. Ladies and gentlemen, now for the second session, I will ask several questions to Mr. Nizam and he will answer to the questions. But before that, let me introduce briefly the background of our distinguished speaker. Mr. Nizam Bashir bin Abdul Kariem Bashir graduated with his LLB from Bond University, Australia, and was called to the bar in 1998. He also holds a diploma in Sharia Law and Legal Practice, DSLP, from UIAM, and is admitted as well licensed to practice as a Sharia lawyer in Malacca. On a non-domestic front, he has spoken at the United Nations Asian and Pacific meeting on the question of Palestine and participate in various conferences on media freedom, internet law, as well as juvenile justice. After getting known with our distinguished speaker, now let's moving on to the first question. So Firstly, Assalamualaikum, Mr. Nizam. Uh, okay, so my first question is regarding your experience, because as we know, when we look at your background, so you graduated from Australia. So my first question is, based on your own experience, can you share with us about advantages and disadvantages become a law graduates from Australia, or maybe as a abroad student. So maybe there is challenges that you face when you want to become a lawyer in Malaysia.
Well, I don't know whether there is any clear-cut advantages as such. I think all that matters is the place that you studied is a university that challenges you as a student. In fact, what I do remember is when I first came back from Australia, my difficulty was actually not being very familiar with the local cases. So I suppose in a sense you can say that's a disadvantage. But I think the purpose of any university is just to equip you with the tools to be a lawyer. And I think it is then up to you as a student to sort of figure out how to use those tools. Now, of course, there's a distinction in terms of when you get when you're educated, I think in a foreign university, maybe there's not so much spoon feeding as such. And sometimes that can be a bit jarring as a student that comes from Malaysia, because we are so used to the perhaps teachers giving us the materials beforehand and ensuring that we you know, there sometimes are at least lecture note outlines and things like that. I remember going to one particular constitutional law lecture. The lecturer was, I think he was a guest lecturer from another university, I think from Sydney. He came in and he just jumped into sort of a question and answer session on the relevant cases that he wanted to talk about on the day. So the culture sometimes is a bit different. But I think it was an interesting experience to be exposed to a course that's being taught in a foreign university. In my case, of course, when I came back, I did my Sharia in UIA. And again, you can see that culturally things were slightly different. And, you know, it was interesting to see, I think, the different perspectives the respective law program, quote unquote, had to offer. Because I suppose when you are being taught sort of a Western secular law program, the approach is different as compared to perhaps Sharia, which is rooted on the Quran and the Sunnah. Yeah, and I found it a very useful and sort of life-changing experience in that sense.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nizam. Okay, so for my second question, as we know, you are a lawyer, and also you have built your own law firm. So can you share with us about your journey to be a lawyer, and also maybe challenges that you have faced that you have never told, or you never tell this to the others about the challenges that you have faced when you want to build your own law firm?
My journey in becoming a lawyer started maybe when I was about 7 years old or so. It wasn't a movie, it wasn't a book which motivated me to be a lawyer. I became a lawyer because my late father was a lawyer. He was a well-known lawyer in my hometown, Melaka. He too was a court-going lawyer. He started as a criminal lawyer, in fact, but oddly enough, shifted from criminal practice to doing a lot of civil commercial cases. Now, of course, with that sort of a background, it's not too surprising that, you know, I followed my late father to court. And I frankly started doing that since I was about 7 years old. I'm not saying that I followed him for all the cases he did, but for some cases, And certainly it started when I was about 7. Yeah. Now, of course, by the same token, because I was 7 years old, it was completely boring to go to court at that age. Because as you know, when you go to court, you have to be totally silent. So as a 7-year-old boy, that's almost impossible to ask, boy to be quiet. But that's what I did. Then in the mid 1980s, when courts shifted from English to Malay, I helped my father translate his submissions, translate his cross-examination questions from English to Malay. So it was a challenging time for practice for senior lawyers at the time. In my father's case, I remember that he specifically started taking Bahasa tuition at the age of 40. So, I mean, that's something that I found quite remarkable when I look back at how he wanted to adapt to the changing times in the mid-80s, yeah? Now, of course, having done all that, having had that experience, I frankly didn't want to be a lawyer. When I was asked what I wanted to do in life, I told my father that I wanted to be a writer. My father very quickly shot down that idea. He just said to me, you can write on the side, do law. And that's what happened. Quite interestingly, of course, since I've done law, of course, I can't say I regret doing law. I do enjoy practice, especially when I'm doing public interest cases. But interestingly enough, my father's vision of me sort of writing on the side has sort of come through as I've written a number of things over the years. I've contributed a chapter on law and Islam. I've blogged for a couple of years. I was guest columnist on Malaysian Insider. I've been a speaker on law and Islam for many years as well. I've been interviewed on media on the specific issue, TV3, RTM, BFM, you name it. As far as how I've built my firm, well, the short story is this. I succeeded my father. I took over his practice in Malacca. I was based there for many years. I moved up to KL in 2010. And my legal firm is now based in Malacca.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nizam. So, like you have just said just now, you didn't in a yearly of your age, you do not want to become a lawyer. So now you have already become a lawyer. So maybe have you ever thought that to quitting from being a lawyer and do something else?
I don't think you need to quit law to do something else. I enjoy practice. I mean, I've been doing this since 1998. It's been about 22 years of active practice as a litigation lawyer. Yeah. Of course, practice as a litigation lawyer is challenging. Either you enjoy it or you don't. But I can't say that, I've seriously thought about quitting practice. Of course, when, we are human. When we lose a case, we say the strangest things. We think about also the strangest things, whether to remain in practice or otherwise. But, that's part and parcel of being a lawyer. Sometimes you win cases, sometimes you lose cases. I think the most important thing is to find the courage, find the stamina to persist in what you're doing. At the end of the day, all you can do is work hard and leave the rest to judges. But of course, let me also say that you can do many other things other than being a lawyer, rather than just being a practicing lawyer with your law degree. Yeah. So, for example, you can be a writer. John Grisham, if you know John Grisham, he was a criminal lawyer before he was a famous author. You can be a film star. Gerard Butler from the film or the movie 300, he was a film star. But before he is a film star. Before he became a film star, of course, he was a lawyer. He of course, sort of left the law after he was a trainee lawyer. He was fired for some reason or another. You can be a singer. Sudirman was a singer. He was also a lawyer. He studied law in UM. Andrea Bocelli, he's a singer as well, with a law degree. You can be a politician, lawyers, for some reason, are very fond of joining politics. But I suppose being a lawyer gives you the training to be a good politician. It gives you the training to speak in public, to reason, to analyze issues. Famous politician, famous lawyers come politician. Karpal Singh is the obvious one. Gandhi is the other one. You can also, of course, you know, you can choose so many other fields if you choose to quit doing law, but it's up to you. But there's so many things that you can do and still remain in practice. I've just named you, for example, some of the things that you can do. If you choose to remain in practice, you can still do so many things.
Thank you, Mr. Nizam. So now let's getting deeper into our discussion. So as a Muslim law students, this issue have been discussed a long time, which is the recognition from the LPQB. So as we know, Muslim still until today we still do law program in Muslim still do not have the recognition from LPQB. So my question is it really waste of time if we studied law really hard, but at the end of the day we cannot become a civil lawyer? What's your thought about that? Regarding
Well, the obvious thing to ensure happens is to ensure that USIM obtains recognition for its degree or for its law program. Yeah, and the best example that I can think of is MMU. MMU was, I think, in the initial years, also not sort of recognized by the LPQB. Over the years, in the initial years, that is, over the years, they worked hard to ensure that their program obtained the recognition of the LPQB. And I think how they did that was to engage legal practitioners to sort of have an input on their legal program. They organized a lot of moods, they organized talks, and they ensured also practitioners participated as lecturers in their university. And this is to ensure that when they make their assessment, in fact, even before the LPQB makes their assessment, you have input from practitioners itself as to whether or not the program is sensible or otherwise, yeah? And it's just a matter of tweaking your program to ensure that it's relevant, to ensure that it is practical for law students. So that's, I think, my first suggestion vis-a-vis the question, yeah? I think it's not a lost cause. It's just a matter of ensuring that the recognition is given in due course. Now, having said that, of course, in the interim, anyone who's got a law degree, you know, the particular student may not be able to wait for recognition. Well, rest assured that a law degree is a pathway to many other careers. If one was minded to pursue other careers, I mean, with a law degree, you're not restricted to being a lawyer. You can go into journalism, you can go into filmmaking, you can be a company secretary, you can be in business. I remember in my law faculty, we actually had a law lecturer who was a former medical doctor. And that goes to show, just because you may have been trained in a particular field, it doesn't mean that you can't retrain to do something else. That particular law lecturer was a lecturer who lost his arm in some accident. He could no longer become a surgeon. And because of that, retrained to be a lawyer. So similarly, if we take inspiration from that particular law lecturer, just because you're a lawyer, trained in law, it doesn't mean that you can't retrain to be something else. You will find, I think, in some other faculties overseas, the typical subjects that a lawyer is ordinarily trained in is expanded now. You're not geared to be one type of lawyer. So there's many flavors, many areas in which a lawyer can contribute their services to. So for example, I think in Harvard, there's actually a course in programming for lawyers these days. So you're not just expected to be a sort of a dispute resolution lawyer, i.e. a court-going lawyer. So many things you can do.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nizam. Since USIM law program do not have CLP, so in order to be called to the bar, USIM law graduates need to pass the CLP in order to become a civil lawyer. So, is it really impossible to finish CLP for USIM law graduates since few has done it?
Well, this is actually a perennial question, and it's not just confined to USIM law graduates. Graduates from other universities coming from, let's say, UK, coming back to Malaysia and wanting to practice in Malaysia, they have to do the CLP if they don't do the English bar. Yeah. And of course, you know, when the CLP was initially introduced, the CLP pass rate was something like 94%. Since then, and that was in 1984, since then, if you talk about 2012 and thereabouts, the pass rates has been about 40 odd percent. Yeah. So for sort of every 5 students that takes the CLP, only 2 will pass statistically. Okay. But I think just because that is the statistics, I don't think anyone should therefore be discouraged. I mean, for all you know, if you study hard, work hard, I mean, USIM can be one of the 2, or if not, maybe even 2 of the 5 that actually get through CLP. So the only question, of course, is to ensure that you put in the hours and make sure that you equip yourself appropriately for your CLP studies. Strangely enough, civil procedure seems to be the weakest subject in CLP. So that's something that needs to be looked at. If USIM law graduates are having issues in that department, I can't say enough about ensuring that you get legal practitioners to come in and maybe even start lecturing in your civil procedure or CLP related subjects, so that you equip yourself early on as to what is expected in your CLP sort of studies. But don't give up. Statistics are just statistics. If you talk about statistics, you know, a huge number of marriages are supposed to fail in the first 7 years. People still get married. It's just a number.
Okay, now let's moving on to the question relating to the industry. So yeah, because as we know, we as a students, when we have graduate, at the end of the day, what we want to do with our degree is to be employed and getting a good job in the industry. So you you also as a employer, as a employer, so can you share with us what is the main requirements that the law firm or law company requests from her new employees for being a civil lawyer?
I think it depends on the area of practice for the firm in question. Okay. You see, a commercial law firm, which mainly does, for example, a lot of corporate work, the expectations may be different as compared to, let's say, a dispute resolution firm where, you know, you're expected to go to court, you're expected to do cases, etc. Yeah? Similarly, for a criminal practice firm, it's quite different. So you need to identify which area that firm in question is sort of practicing in. So, of course, speaking personally, you know, my firm, we are mainly a dispute resolution firm. And from our perspective, would-be employees must have a decent knowledge of procedural rules of court, for example, 2012. But I think over and above mere knowledge that perhaps can be seen from your academic transcript, I think it never hurts to have, for example, additional sort of things to show. Yeah. So So if you have written articles on the issue, better still, whatever legal issue. If you have a blog, you know, you can use the blog to show off your analytical legal knowledge. You see, every applicant generally comes in, they show off their law degree, they show off their transcript. Be different. Yeah, show off the fact that you are more than just someone who, for example, who's gone through the mill, so to speak, at the university. You're doing things beyond what is expected in university. You're contributing to the legal field in terms of the analysis of the law. Now, of course, when you have written things like legal articles, you've done a blog, the would-be employer is able to assess your ability as an employee as well. And you know, you don't really have to be for, you know, sort of unsure what the legal issues may be on a particular matter. In 2006, maybe even 2004, blogs were not a big thing. 2020, 14 odd years or so later, it's a bit different. There's many blogs you can look at, be inspired by in terms of what to write, and you know, and you're no longer the first person to sort of be writing on the net, for example, and it's relatively cheap actually to start a blog. For example, I know has got the law review online, if I'm not mistaken. Or to be more precise, what I'm certain is they have a blog where students sort of contribute. So what perhaps USIM should even start doing at a law faculty level is to start a blog and invite you know, your students to sort of contribute to the blog and get into the groove of analyzing, get into the groove of contributing articles to a blog. Later on, when you move away from the university, start your own blog. I can't say enough about it, because once you start thinking about the law, you'll be surprised at where you end up. I mean, in 2006, to be very honest, when I had a blog like many years back. I was just writing, you know, in Malacca. I had no plans to come up to KL and things like that. And I was just writing about things that interested me, about, you know, about the law, about Islam, about philosophy. And, you know, I didn't have any plans to share whatever I wrote to anyone. But a friend of mine shared something that I wrote to the bar. And don't ask me how it happened. Somehow or other, from that moment, from I think 2006, it took about 4 years before I ended up in KL. Things just happen. Yeah. So people, I think, will notice you as long as you're prepared to put in, I think, the hours. It doesn't mean that you need to write to show off to anyone. I think even if you're writing only for yourself, thinking about the law, ultimately, I think it will even show up in terms of your practice as a lawyer. And somehow or other, things will work out. And you will end up where you're supposed to be ending up. It may sound somewhat mysterious, but you know, I think things have a way of working out. You want to call it qada and qadar? Maybe that's what it is. Yeah. But I think there is no substitute for being a scholar, being a student, being, you know, just working hard and thinking about the law. The law is challenging because in particular, when you're thinking about public interest issues. I mean, let's just look at a few days back. We had that controversy about the Muslim bakery, for example, that was baking this cake, and then, you know, they were not comfortable in printing Merry Christmas on the cake. So the question is, for example, whether that's something that we as a community should censure, to sanction the bakery effectively for not being able to sort of serve the needs of all customers equally, or whether it is appropriate that you protect the baker for their ability to profess and practice their belief. So you need to look also into the Federal Constitution to look at the rights that parties may have. So when you deal with topical issues like that, you can argue it out, either for or against. Sometimes there's no right answer. but it's a matter of ensuring that you present the best case for that particular person.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nizam. So uh, now let's moving on to next question. Due to the pandemic COVID-19, we can see that our economy become worse, and then we can see a lot of industry collapse. For example, tourism industry. So how about this legal area, which is lawyer affected with this situation? And then my question is, what is your expectation for the legal market in next year, 2021?
I'm actually a bit curious about this concern about COVID, because you're not the first person to ask me this question. I've got a chambering student, and even she seems to be very concerned about COVID, as somehow or other affecting the ability of lawyers to gain an income. Perhaps my return question is this: so COVID happens, are you therefore leaving practice? Are you therefore going to be to stop being a law student? And if you're going to do that, where are you going to? Are you going to be a doctor? Since that's going to be like the market that's going to be booming, is it? So I think it's not practical to be too worried about things like that. I think ultimately there's always things to do. The only difference is, for example, perhaps if to put it more crudely, kalau dulu makan nasi biryani, today makan nasi putih lah. I don't think that should worry us too much. And generally, if you ask me whether income is affected post-COVID, I don't see it as being truly affected. Perhaps the only time that it was a bit challenging was when the initial sort of orders were made, the MCO orders, when law firms could not open for about 2 months, give or take. That was about the only challenging time. But other than that, since then, I think the government has been doing quite a decent job in terms of ensuring that we manage our numbers, I mean, you also of course need to look at the area of practice. We come back to the other question. So for example, certain areas of practice may be generally affected slightly more as compared to other fields. But for example, where dispute resolution is concerned, court-going lawyers, I don't think you're really affected so much. Cases are still there. Construction disputes, they're still well and alive. Numbers are still the same, if not more, perhaps. The difficulty may be in terms of the court being able to deal with the number of cases as before. I think how the courts have sort of tried to deal with the numbers of cases. Keep in mind, before anyone gets confused, the number of cases remains the same. The way in which we deal with the disputes may have changed, and this is how it's changed. So before, let's say you had 1,000 cases, let's say a month, let's say, you can't maybe deal with those numbers physically. So what the courts have done is they have dealt with the case by 50% going online, 50% physical. So numbers of cases remain the same. It's just the way in which we deal with it has changed. So you look at courts, for example, there's numerous methods in which online hearings are being organized, whether it's commercial cases, whether it is civil cases. So I don't think COVID is a real problem in that sense. It's just we have to be a bit creative in terms of how we deal with matters. I think that's the only concern, if any, because, for example, senior practitioners may be a little bit unfamiliar with how cases are supposed to be dealt with online. But all of you are clearly very competent with going online. This Zoom seminar or Zoom webinar is the best example of it. So millennials, people of your generation, I don't think it's a problem. So I don't think you need to be concerned so much about it. If you look at the GDP numbers for Malaysia, it's actually on the rise. Our Minister of Finance has said it's about close to 5%. So I don't think COVID is a problem in that sense. It's just, we just need to be creative. The legal industry, I think, is quite resilient, and I don't think we need to be too worried about it.
So, in other words, that you think that legal market in 2021 will not affected a lot due to this situation, isn't it?
Well, I think maybe there may be even a new sunrise industry in the legal market, COVID-related business. You see, in the sense that one of the sort of areas of practice one can always look into is, on the one hand, let me be more specific now. Let's look at, for example, construction contracts, right? Now, as a consequence of COVID-related issues, maybe some contracts can't be performed, etc. Right? As you know, we've got the COVID-specific act that was passed. There are specific schedules of types of contracts that can be affected by COVID, and it throws up new issues because the jurisprudence on that is relatively new. So if you talk about the legal industry sort of being shortchanged in terms of numbers of cases, I don't think so. I think there's new areas of laws for us to sort of look into. And because of that, I think the legal industry perhaps may even see a boom in terms of the size of the legal market, because there are new areas of law that we need to look into.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nizam. So my next question is, does CGPA is really important to become a lawyer? Do we there any specific requirement on the CGPA? Maybe some like we need to get 3.5 and above to become a lawyer, or not?
I think it depends on your employer. So when any law graduate approaches an employer, it depends on the area of practice. So some areas of practice may insist that employees are very well qualified. But it also depends, yeah? There are other areas of practice where that's not so much of an importance. Let me give you two very important examples. One of the perhaps most renowned criminal law practitioners in Malaysia is probably Karpal Singh. Karpal Singh didn't have a very high CGPA, to put it very politely. He took 7 years to do his law in NUS. Of course, he was a bit distracted by student politics and all that. But the point is, he didn't have a very sterling sort of result to show for his time during in NUS. But by the same token, just because he didn't have a high CGPA, it did not mean that he's not a good lawyer. Okay, so CGPA alone doesn't guarantee that you will be a good lawyer. The other person that I can talk about is Raja Aziz Sadros. Consummate gentleman as a lawyer, extremely well respected, became Malaysia Bar President a number of times. But if you look at perhaps his academic performance as a student, may not be that great. But if you see him arguing matters in court, he's a first-class lawyer. So CGPA alone doesn't make you a great lawyer. Some countries, for example, in the US, you must have a previous degree before you can do law. Okay? And the reason for that is they want to ensure that you have an appreciation for other things more than just law, more than just grades, before you can be a lawyer. And I find that that's an interesting approach. So, for example, let me come back to my university as well. In my university, it wasn't just about the law. We had 4 core subjects that we had to learn. So we had to learn communication skills, we had to learn management, we had to learn information technology, where we were trained how to use Microsoft Word. You may think, hey, what's so great about teaching someone about Microsoft Word? But they teach you how to do your indexing, they teach you how to do your table of contents, how to format paragraphs, using styles. Yeah, they teach you how to use Excel. They teach you how to program and create a database. So very unconventional subject matters, more than just doing law as such. We also had to learn about cultural and ethical values, which is basically philosophy. So I think going by that sort of exposure and looking back at my practice, I would say those things have helped me. So it's not just CGPA alone. So look beyond the law. If you can engage your law lecturers, I mean, if you're allowed to do electives, do perhaps non-law related subjects alone. Because practice is not just about the law. It's a bit more than that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nizam. So, for my next question, I have read a lot of cases, a lot of law books, and I quite frequently I've found this term, which is peguam lantikan mahkamah. So, but I do not understand what the meaning of that term, peguam lantikan mahkamah. So, can you explain more about this term? What does it mean? What that term means?
Well, court assigned counsels are basically counsels assigned to accused in criminal cases who can't afford appointing a lawyer. And the case in question is a criminal case with capital punishment. So, for example, in drug cases, where there is a death sentence. So, to ensure that everyone has access to justice, there's a system in place whereby there are lawyers appointed for those sort of accused. Yeah. And generally, it will be senior lawyers because capital punishment are serious matters. And there's always a list, and from that list, counsels will be appointed by court.
Okay, so because we are running out of time, so my last question is, what is another option or job opportunity if we, as a law graduates, for example, do not want to pursue to become a lawyer? So, what can we do with our law degree? What job opportunity that we can get?
I don't want to be prescriptive in terms of telling you what you can do. I think the question must be phrased this way. What can't you do as a lawyer? And I can't think of anything that you can't do as a, well, not as a lawyer, as a law degree holding person. Save perhaps for maybe like specific fields like medicine, engineering. I mean, the options as a law degree holder is, to my mind, unlimited. You can do anything. There's nothing that you can't do. So don't be worried. The sky is not about to fall down. There's no limits as to what you can do. So if in particular, if something interests you, look into it. You will find, I think, because you have been equipped with the skills required to be a lawyer, you will approach things in a slightly different fashion.
So thank you, Ms. Nizam. So we have already end for this session. So hopefully after hearing this speech, this talk, our discussion, it will help us in regards of having a better future in law as a law graduate. So now, ladies and gentlemen, as all of you might have been waiting for, now we will proceed to the Q&A session. Any audience may start asking our speaker now. If you are not able to open the mic, so you may leave your questions in the chat box and I will read for you.
Okay, while waiting for others to ask question, can I ask the question first? Mr. Nizam, before this, I read your background and I know that you already built your own firm. So, if a law student or a person who wish to build their own law firm, so what do you think the experience needed for the law student? Maybe he need to be in a legal field for around 5 years or 10 years. After that, he ready to build his own law firm. So, can you share with us your based on your experience?
I think that it's sensible to work for at least a couple of years first before you start opening your law firm. The reason for that is you should have the guidance of those who have been in the field for a long time. And even if you have opened your own law firm, make sure that you're friends with lawyers who are senior to you. The reason for that is at least you have guidance. Sometimes practice is very challenging. There may be issues arising which you are not too familiar with. Yeah, and it's always helpful to have sort of advice from those who have been, in practice for many years. I have lawyer friends who have been in practice for years, and I have to say that the bar is a great place in that sense. You have seniors who are happy to lend a hand if necessary on whatever matter. I mean, buy them a cup of tea, have a chat with them. Most times, I think junior lawyers always are afraid of sort of meeting up with senior lawyers and speaking to them, etc. But I think that shouldn't be the case. I think you stand to benefit more. And it's a two-way sort of relationship. Even for senior lawyers, it's helpful when you have the perspective of those younger who are new to the bar, because then you appreciate, for example, the issues that they face. Because after a few years, you may not have matters in the magistrate courts. You don't know what the issues are in the magistrate courts. And if you're friends with juniors, you have an input, you have an insight into what the problems may be. Of course, in my case, I find that sort of insight helpful because I also sit in a particular subcommittee in the KL bar. That insight is very helpful because we need to forward those views to the administrators of the courts. Yeah. And some matters I'm not familiar with these days because I don't go to those courts. Yeah. But either way, the other reason why I also say it's good for you to work for a few years under someone, make the mistakes at their expense. So at least they are able to remedy the issues, rectify the issues, guide you as to what's the proper way to manage a file, how to manage a firm. Those are all very important things. So running or starting your own firm, it's not just about, I want to be my own boss, I want to be making money, I want to drive my first Mercedes and all that. Legal practice is quite interesting in the sense that you're dealing with the public. You want to ensure that the public get the services that they want. And the best way to think about it is if you look at how it is, for example, for doctors have to do many, many years of housemanship, working essentially with the hospital, being trained by seniors before they can, sort of go out, in public and offer their services. And I think that's a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. But of course, I also recognize there sometimes can be exceptions. There can be some student who's extremely capable. But I think by and large, it's always good to ensure that you have the guiding hand of those who are senior, helping juniors to offer their legal services to the public.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nizam, for your answer.
Okay.
So next question from El Yahya. Okay, Assalamualaikum, Mr. Nizam. I would like to ask your opinion. Is it a big loss for a law graduate students if they are not going for chambering and call to the bar? In short, to have a practice certificate.
You know, it's actually a common question. When I spoke in UIA, of course, the question was couched slightly differently then, because I think they're talking about the common bar course, which local graduates from local universities also have got to go through. Yeah. And the reaction essentially was, why even have any subsequent training after you've come out from university? Okay. And I can't say I agree with that sort of a perspective. Personally, having gone through my 9 months as a chambering student, I found it useful to be guided as to how to practice as a lawyer, at least during the 9 months. And even after my 9 months, even though I was sort of already in my own firm, I always had those who are a bit more experienced around me, guiding me as to what needed to be done. Litigation in particular is quite challenging. You are supposed to draw on a number of disciplines in order for you to properly as a litigation lawyer. On the one hand, there's your pleadings, then there's your examination in chief, your cross-examination, there's evidence law to be considered. So it's a whole number of things. And I think it can be quite overwhelming, in particular, when you're a young lawyer. So if you ask me what's the best field for you to sort of pick up on when you're starting out as a lawyer, maybe it's actually criminal law. There's no real pleadings as such. It's a lot about building your court craft, your advocacy as a lawyer. And it's a good starting ground, I think, as a young lawyer. But I can't say I would agree to doing away with the 9 months. I can consider or even accept any proposals to tweak the chambering sort of component to make it a bit more structured. But I think beyond that, doing away with the 9-month chambering or pupillage period, I can't say I subscribe to that idea.
Is there any other question? Okay, so if we do not have any other question, thank you. A massive thank you to our distinguished speaker for the inspiring a great talk. We as audience find this sharing very helpful for our future. So, ladies and gentlemen, as for memories, we would like to invite all of you to turn on your camera for a virtual photo session.
While waiting for the others to open their camera, I, on behalf UC Muting Club and Law Society, who the organizer committee, are very thankful with sharing session from Mr. Nizam. And I'm sorry if there is any inconvenience when I'm trying to contact you, Mr. Nizam. As you know, sometimes I call you during your weekend. So I really hope that this connection that we built between the Nizam Bashir Associates and our law faculty will sustain, and maybe in future if we have any plan to do or maybe talk program, I really hope that I can invite you or maybe counsel from from your from your law firm. So the representative from Law Society will take the picture. Can I know?
Okay, I will take the picture.
All right.
So, is everyone ready?
Yes.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Shazwana, you okay right there? Okay. One more time. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Last. 1, 2, 3. All right. Nice. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. So, lastly, as there's a saying that everything that begins has to end. Sadly to say, our event has finally came to an end. On behalf of the organizing committee, Law Society and Muslim Meeting Club, we would like to extend our warm gratitude to our distinguished speaker, Mr. Nizam Bashir, and all the audience who have spending your time to join this event. Before that, I would like to convey my deepest apology and regret for any mistakes throughout my duty as MC. We hope that you have gained as much knowledge as possible. Thank you for attending and have a good day ahead. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lasa. Thank you, Mika.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.